in the workforce, any kind of workforce, you hear a lot about human error. Usually it's talked about. It's talked about in a very like just psychology, biology way, and like operations way. And it's this concept of that errors are inevitable, loss is inevitable. When you run a business, there is always that acknowledgement of truly being vulnerable to losing money, losing, stock, and there's like always a sense of grace that has to be given, otherwise dysfunction will occur. Like that's what I would say big business tends to acknowledge, and what little business needs to learn. And so that's why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm going into it. So I just was thinking about how, I was always, encouraged or, spoken to about this concept, and they label it as human. There's poop right there. Oh, there's more poo. Wow, this is like a dog poop split place. Okay, I'm just gonna keep walking till I find a better spot. Anyways, let's see. Is this better? Okay, so I'll stand here. So catch some sun. So yeah, they often would talk about human error, because it's like, to give grace to error, right? So like, for example, if you work a cashier job, there's often discrepancies in the money, and there's always a certain amount of room for discrepancy to be just like natural human error. And then there's usually a limit of that, and then if something is over that limit, then it would be suspicious, right? But there's like a forgiveness or a grace given to human error. And so like when other things would go wrong, like you make a mistake, you punch in something wrong, you sell something for the wrong price. One time I like let somebody leave with like a super expensive item and didn't ring it through by accident. I almost got fired for that, but I didn't get fired for it because they understood that it was just a human error. The purchase was like massive. Like it was like I don't even know how many bags they walked out with. It was a stylist purchase where they purchased like thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and then they keep like a percentage of it, and then they return the rest. And so I let them take like the most expensive dress we had in the store without scanning it by accident. It got missed, and that was like a big deal, but that was like my biggest mistake. But it came back, the dress came back to the store, and then everything was fine. If the dress didn't come back to the store, it would have been really difficult because we couldn't find the SKU for it at all. The only SKU that existed in our records was the one that was attached to the dress. Thank God was still attached to the dress when it came back to the store, because we looked in all our archives and we just couldn't find it by description, because it was just probably such a random description code, and we had no way to really track that down. And so yeah, that was my big human error in retail. And I was forgiven for it because of the concept of human error. And the reason I was thinking about it is because I was like, it's interesting that like all my life it has come at me as a very like sciencey psychology, very like 3D concept or a 4D concept. I don't know what do you want to call it, but it's actually such a deeper cultural truth that dates back to almost every religion, right? But like in all the ancient religions and such, and including Christianity, there is the sense of that humans are imperfect by design, and that we have to have grace and love for ourselves in that way. Being completely imperfect you know. And then that there's like a room for imperfect, and then there's a room of like, okay, that's distortion, or that's taking advantage of, or that's too far, you know. But this planet has been very self-governing in that way, you know. There hasn't really been any there's been a lack of accountability, as we've all seen. It's been very self-accountability based, you know, this whole experience. So anyways, just touching on that. And the parallel between it being a spiritual belief and foundation, and then it being like a very non-spiritual foundation, because I was so introduced to that concept of understanding people and working with people from like a totally different place. I was like brought to that concept through the corporate world, or like the political world, the communications world, and not from a spiritual standpoint. And yet I'm like, oh, that's exactly what spiritualities speak about.